First order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next on the business is the approval of the agenda. Motion approved by Mr. Hess, seconded by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 6-0. I'd like to note for the record, Mr. Salvatore is absent tonight. Next on our agenda is student government activities. Do we have a couple of students? Yes, we do. Welcome.
Good evening. Oof, I'm not tall enough for this. All right. My name is Kayla Ballou.
And my name is Abby O'Connor, and we are members of the Cumberland High School Student Government.
This month, we ran our annual Pennies for Patients fundraiser. These donations were collected from each teacher, and we gave the entirety of these donations to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society for Cancer Research. This year, our goal was to raise $4,000, and while we did not meet that goal, we did manage to raise $3,000.
During the first week of March, students participated in and attended the variety show, which included comedy acts, singing, and dancing. It ran Friday and Saturday night and was an enjoyable night for all. As we move into April, students and teachers are preparing for the quarter 3 closing on April 2nd.
Coming up next month is our April blood drive, which will run from 7:30 to 2 p.m. right here in the transitional cafeteria. This will take place on the 23rd.
Also, Spring Fling, a dance for freshmen and sophomores, will take place April 26th. The fun-filled night will be held at 12 Acres in Smithfield, Rhode Island. Thank you for your time.
Have a sparkly day.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. I'd like to just to welcome our mayors here, Mayor Mutter's here, and our town council liaison, Mr. Kinch, is here as well at the meeting. Thank you for coming.
And the First Lady.
Okay. The First Lady. All right, next on the agenda is our consent agenda. Item number A, approval of minutes from the regular meeting of March 14th, 2019. Item number B, approval of minutes from the executive session from 3/14/2019. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Mr. Fiorello, seconded by Mr. Hess. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is a report out of executive session meeting. Item number A, report out of executive session meeting on 3/28/2019. There were no votes taken upstairs in the executive session, and I need a motion to seal the minutes.
Motion to seal.
Motion to seal by Mr. Hess,
Second.
second by Mr. Fiorello. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. I guess it's going to be a guys now on this side. All right, next is Superintendent Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. If you could please join me down at the podium, Mr. Chairman. Take a picture of us, Kelly. Can you take a picture? You know what? Stand right in the corner. This is Mr. Hello. Good evening, everyone. It is, again, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Sahasra Yanumila. Did I say your name correctly? And the reason that we have invited her this evening is because she was the winner of the Cumberland Spelling Bee. She did an outstanding job, and it's really amazing. I just want to share a little bit of information with you about the spelling bee, which took place in the high school auditorium on February 26th. She is a 5th grader at community school, and to suggest that she is an amazing speller would be an understatement. And you know what, I said that evening when I congratulated all of the students who made it to the finals of the spelling bee, there's no doubt in my mind that I would not have been able to participate because I definitely am not as good a speller as all of the students who were there that evening. And I must tell you that this young lady is incredibly impressive. And in fact, it went to 26 rounds in our spelling bee. 26 rounds before they were able to determine a winner. And fortunately for us, it was Sahasra. So Sahasra then went on to the state competition, which was held in Lincoln, right? Was it Lincoln Middle School? Lincoln Middle School. And it was sponsored by the Valley Breeze. And she did exceptionally well in that competition. 26 students participated, and she made it to the final 6, and there were 12 rounds. She made it through 12 rounds in that competition. So she represented Cumberland exceptionally well. So we felt it was appropriate that we have her come here this evening and let her know how impressed we were with her performance. And we have this certificate as a token of our appreciation of how well you represented us, and you did an outstanding job, so congratulations to you. We're going to take a quick picture, and then we're going to do a little mini spelling bee. No. And, you know, I can't begin to tell you and how impressed I was. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was how fast she was when she was able to spell the words. A lot of the competitors actually used a strategy, because you could ask for a definition, you could ask for a word to be used in a sentence, and several students, you know, have competed many times before, and they actually had a strategy. It's interesting because she didn't have to use that strategy. She was able to spell the words like almost instantaneously. It's very impressive. So congratulations again. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to share one other thing with you. Just bear with me, I have to find my notes. We had a very successful athletic season. As you may recall, very recently, the Cumberland High School hockey team won the Division II state championship, and I was able to attend at least one of those championship games, and they were impressive, and the games were exciting. I had a chance to go to the first one, which took place on the Brown University campus, and you know, I mean, every game was really close. In fact, the game that we attended went into overtime. Really exciting, and I believe the final game, the championship game, actually went into overtime as well, as I understand it. So it was an outstanding series, and congratulations to the Cumberland hockey team for winning a state championship. It's something that they will remember for the rest of their lives. I think everybody also heard about the boys basketball team. They were the 16th seed in the state tournament, and in the first round they knocked off the #1 seed, Bishop Henrican, and they actually made it to the Final Four, had a chance to go to the game at the University of Rhode Island in the semifinal game, and you know, they played well, but they played a really talented Woonsocket team. They really had an exceptional series, and it just goes to show you the great thing about sports is, you know, on any given day, anyone can win, and it was really exciting for them to defeat the #1 seed. We also should mention that the boys swim team finished 5th in the state championship meet. The girls finished 7th in the state championship meet. And this is really impressive. Senior Cole Hooper, a member of the track team, throws the weight. They used to call it the shot, but now it's the weight. He made all division, all class, all state, and he is an All-American. So we're going to, because of his throw, he threw the weight 70 feet, which is, Matt Campanelli, the athletic director, said that it would be like the equivalent of a batter batting 400 for a season. So it was incredible, and we'll get the hockey team in here for a meeting so we could recognize them, and we'll also get Cole in here too so we can recognize his All-American status in the way through. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Next order of business is payment of bills. Mr. Hess.
We did not have payment of bills this evening.
Okay. Next on our agenda is Fiscal Management Subcommittee update.
Okay, Fiscal did meet upstairs. I apologize for the delay. We had a kind of full agenda there, so I'll just go over the highlights here. We don't have a current balance on the lunch, the overdue lunch amounts. We'll have that at the beginning of the month. However, they did receive 2 checks totaling $1,100, so the effort to get those overdue balances paid off seems to be working well. The mayor addressed the finance subcommittee regarding the town's fiscal challenges and asked for our assistance in picking up some of the master leases that the town normally pays for, given the rather precarious situation that the town finds itself in at the moment. In addition, we did have an abbreviated but informative discussion with Dr. Santa regarding the special education budget and the increases that we have seen there. I believe Dr. Santa did an excellent job of explaining the challenges that we see with regard to special education budgets, but also highlighting how she and her staff over the past several years have done a remarkable job of trying to rein in those costs and find a way to provide the services to students that they need, but also maximizing tax dollar expenditures at the same time. In addition to that, we had a few items that will come up later in the budget or later in the agenda that we'll discuss at that point.
Any questions for Mr. Hess? All right, thank you very much. Next is Policy and Procedure Subcommittee update.
Policy and procedures did meet the other night. We discussed 3 policies: I-15, the curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials; J-13, the child abuse and neglect prevention; and also the I-7 school volunteers policy. I-15 and J-13 will be voted on later this evening. School volunteer policy was just really a beginning conversation about making some tweaks to the policy. Changes to the policy, rather. That was tabled and will be discussed at a future meeting. I will say that on April 23rd at our next policy meeting, at our policy meeting on April 23rd, Mr. D'Amato will be introducing the homework policy that we've discussed in the past. So that's something to look forward to. We will discuss I-15 and J-13 later on in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Fiorello. Any questions for Mr. Fiorello? None? Thank you. So we have Achievement and Communication Subcommittee update.
So the Achievement and Communications Subcommittee met Tuesday night with one primary topic, which was standards-based grading at the high school. And Mr. D'Amato had opened the meeting explaining that this is standards-based grading in Cumberland is a district-wide project. not just the high school, as we all likely know, our parents know, and we're in year 2 of a 6-year implementation. So there's been cross-functional teams put together to really look at and evaluate standards-based grading. For this meeting, we had the high school administration team led by Mr. Costa explaining the work that they've been doing behind the scenes to improve the rigor and consistency of grading at the high school, and to look at measurement standards and common rubrics and banks of progress assessments. And every time I listen to the administration team give an update, I am more and more impressed by all the work that goes on behind the scenes that often as parents and students and community members, we don't get to see that work. But what it results in and what it will result in is consistency in how students are being graded at the high school, and consistency in how they're graded, and consistency and rigor of curriculum at the high school. So implementing this fall, they have some changes to standards-based grading. The most important one, I think, that parents need to know is that letter grades are not going away. We still will have letter grades. So most of the work that's happening is happening behind the scenes. And one important output of it is that because of the consistency in how the grading is happening and the rubrics that are happening class to class, grade to grade, it will give our students more specific feedback throughout the year to help them really understand where they're achieving against the standards. So, and then ultimately overall to help achievement with all of our students. So there's lots of work happening. There are changes that need to happen in Aspen. There's curriculum departments that are continuing to meet. There will be 2 town hall meetings before school opens in August to allow parents to come and learn more about this. It will be covered at the freshman orientation with parents and students, and there will be student meetings at each grade level. So more to come on this, but rest assured that there's really good work in ensuring that our students at the high school are truly getting a consistent and rigorous curriculum, and that the grading will truly reflect that. So that was what we talked about at our Tuesday meeting.
Great. Any questions from Mrs. Friedman? None. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is comments from the public. Mr. Kinch would like, Town Councilor Kinch would like to address the.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the Town Council, I just want to pass on our congratulations to our young speller. As I've been in my short time on the Town Council, I enjoy more and more of the achievements and how successful our young people really have been. I also want to acknowledge the success of the basketball team. Cole Hooper, I was able to talk to his mom, and reading the Valley Breeze, he got a scholarship on top of that, so we got a lot to be proud of. I also want to take just a second to congratulate or acknowledge the hockey team. I think some of the folks may know my son was a member of the hockey team and played for Coach Paquin, Coach Andriozzi, and he's really running off a nice stretch of championships since 2008. And what I was impressed with those coaches, like all of our coaches, they become mentors and also friends. My son, who is now 25, graduated URI and so forth, still keeps in touch with Coach Andriozzi. So just shows you what kind of character that you folks appoint. So thank you very much, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Councilor Kinch. Next order of business is public hearings. Item number A, reading of amended policies. Number 1 is I-15, curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials. Mr. Fiorello? All right, and next, number 2 is G-19, reporting child abuse and neglect, formerly J-13, child abuse and neglect prevention. And item number 3, I-7, school volunteers, is tabled. Any public comment in regards to these 2 policies we're going to vote on tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to old business. Discussion and a vote to approve SCR 2019-03 Supportive Solar Power Purchase Agreement. That's going to be tabled to our next meeting so that the Cumberland Town Council and the Fiscal for the Town Council will have a vote on that on Wednesday. So I need a motion to table for 2 weeks to our next meeting. Mr. Hess makes a motion to table to the next meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Friedman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Next is discussion and a vote to approve the fiscal year 2020 school budget. Mr. Hess.
Okay, we did discuss this upstairs. This is essentially the same budget as we discussed last week. The only adjustment has been related to a staffing change that was necessitated based on a special ed student coming into the district. So the finance director adjusted some things. It's still the same bottom line number. So it did pass on a 3-0 vote upstairs, and I would pass it off to the committee.
So we have a budget from the superintendent that is going through fiscal in a couple of meetings, and we've heard from the special ed as well. By charter, we have to send this by Monday to the finance director of the town for the town to take a look at our proposal for the budget. So I need a motion from the floor to send this to the town council.
I'll make a motion to send
Make a
this to the
motion by
council.
Mrs. Waters. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Friedman. Any discussion? Mr. Fiorello.
I just want to say that being on the school committee for however long I've been, 7 years, I think. This is probably the most straightforward budget that I think we've had. We know the situation the town's in. We're in a pretty good place right now. We just went with a 4%. We know what our needs are. We wish there was more that we could put into this budget, but we can't. But I will support this budget.
Anyone else?
I'll
Mrs.
have a
Waters?
comment, yep. So being new to the town council, I'm, where am I? Being new to the school committee, I feel very confident in the amount of discussion that we had around the budget last week, and then also tonight with the discussion that we had with Dr. Santa regarding the special ed line item of the budget. I was really pleased that, you know, all the questions that I had were answered, and everyone was very patient with all my questions, so I'm feeling very confident in this budget.
Well, I can say it's going to be tough budget this year when we give it to when the mayor gives it to the town council, and hopefully they see it to that they give us the appropriations that we're looking for to continue moving the district forward. We didn't get to be number 4 in the state by accident, and even though we were the lowest funding, and we've talked about it for years, we've had a plan in place to ask for what we need to move the district. So hopefully when the mayor makes his proposal that we get what we can get out of it, and we don't need to make necessary cuts. So with that said, anyone else? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor to send this to the finance director?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you. Next is item number B, Mayor Mother to discuss the master lease. I told him you really didn't need to speak about it. Mr. Hess brought it up, but he addressed us in fiscal. There's a financial need for the school committee to help pay the master leases that we used to pay in the past. And we're going to make some of those payments this year to help the town stay legal when it comes to their budget. So it was discussed upstairs. It's an issue we'll deal with. Next is recommendation number C, discussion of the vote to rescind one teacher non-renewal recommendation. Mr. Superintendent?
Yes, I believe that based on the conversation that we had earlier this evening in one of the subcommittee meetings, that we were going to table this.
That's fine. So I need a motion to table. Motion to table by Mr. Hess, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Fiorello. All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. So that'll be tabled to our next meeting. Item number D, discussion and a vote to approve overnight student field trip number 1, CHS students to Spain and Portugal, April of 2020. Welcome. Come up.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to let us speak with you tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Saul Disla, and I'm a Spanish teacher here at Cumberland High School. With me is my colleague Isabel Claro, who's a Portuguese and Spanish teacher as well at the high school. The reason why we're here tonight is because we would like to seek approval for a student trip to Spain and Portugal during the April vacation of 2020, so next school year. There's a few reasons why we believe this trip is important and why we would like to make it happen. Number one, we would like to give the student an opportunity to actually be immersed in the language. It is very important for them to actually use the language in a real life situation. There's only so much that we can do in a classroom setting to provide those students with those opportunities. And for them to actually use the language, I believe it's going to be an eye-opening experience for them. Number two, not only are they going to be exposed to the language, but also to the culture. They're going to learn about the history, traditions, the reason people live the way that they live, and how the culture and the language actually come together. Third, we would like that though, all the experiences that they get, everything that they learn, they actually can bring back with them to the classroom and share with the rest of their friends, with their community, and keep those experiences with them for the rest of their life, and hopefully make them a better and more aware global citizen during this 21st century. This trip has run successfully in previous year, and Senora Claro can testify to that. And the last time that we did it, it was truly amazing to see how much the student learned in that short amount of time, and the bonds that they created. We have stayed in touch, at least I have stayed in touch with a few of them, and because of that trip, they actually have decided to continue the language studies in college, and some of them actually are going to study abroad in the near future. A copy of the itinerary, I believe, was provided to Mr. Costa and Mr. Mitchell. And during the time that we're going to be there, we're going to visit, in Spain, we're going to visit the city of Madrid, Salamanca, Toledo, and Sevilla. And then we're going to spend a few days in Portugal, in Lisbon, Porto, and Cascais, right? The cost of the trip is $3,255, and what's included on that, it is the airfare, hotels, transportation while we're there, the entrance to any museum or any activities that we're there, breakfast, dinner, and as well as an insurance policy that will cover them in case that there's an accident or injury that might happen during that trip. Another reason why we'd like to get this trip approved as soon as possible is to allow the student, giving them an opportunity to actually schedule a payment plan that is suitable for them, and they can actually afford to attend that trip. As of right now, we don't have the information of the flights and hotel that's going to be provided later on, and as soon as we have that information, I will be uploading that information on that folder that has been shared with you. And the goal is to take about 15 to 20 students on this trip, and for every 5 students that we take, we are planning to bring a chaperone with us. Am I forgetting anything? Any question that you?
Are there any questions from the school committee members?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mrs. Waters.
First of all, I wholeheartedly support this. I think it's really important for our kids to have a global view of the world in their life, so they're, it kind of takes it around all about them to, there's other things happening. Is there any possibility for fundraising for students?
We will discuss an opportunity to fundraise, and whatever we fundraise will be distributed amongst the students equally if we do those activities as a group. There's also going to be opportunity for them to fundraise for themselves, and each participant will have a separate account that money will go towards their expenses.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I need a motion to approve the trip. Motion approved by Mr. Hess,
Second?
seconded by Mrs. Waters. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next is update on 2019-2020 kindergarten and first grade open registration days. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, as you know, kindergarten registration was held last week on Tuesday and Wednesday, March 19th and March 20th. And the turnout was more than we expected in comparison to the prior year. In fact, we had 220 kindergarten students register last week as compared to last year where during the two-day registration period we had 183 students. So there was a differential of 37 more students this year than last, plus the students who are in the preschool are automatically enrolled into the kindergarten class. We have 52 students from the preschool who will be entering kindergarten next year. So when you add the 220 students that registered on those 2 days, plus the 52 who will automatically be enrolled with the kindergartners next year, the total is 272 students. As compared to last year, the number of preschool students was 42, 10 less than this year. So the differential between this year and last year was 47 students. So it'll be interesting to see what happens between now and the start of the school year. We've actually had a few parents register after those 2 days, and as you all know, we can expect an additional 100 or so students to be registered between now and the beginning of the school year. So, I guess the thing that we'll be interested in really paying attention to is, is this class based on the number of registrations that we've had up to this point, will this be a large class? So we'll really pay attention to that, and we'll keep the school committee informed.
Mr. Mitchell, will we have room?
Well,
are we going to have to move students around the district?
Well, that could very well happen. We know that, in fact, right now, I do have some preliminary information on that, Mr. Chairman. Like, we know that as of right now, we have a couple of, like Ashton, for example, which is a 2-track school. We already are, at maximum enrollment capacity there. There is space at this time at BF. We are, as you can imagine, at community school, we are at capacity, actually a little over. At Cumberland Hill, we have some space available. We also have some space available at Garvin. So the good news is there is some space as of right now, but as I mentioned, we can expect, another 100 or so registrations between now and the start of the school year, and we always need to pay attention to, that very issue that you just brought up. Are we going to need to potentially add a teacher and a class in a school that we know can handle additional students? So those are the kinds of things that we are working on a regular basis, and will be working on between now and the start of the school year. We'll keep you posted on that.
Thank you. Mr. Hess?
Mr. Mitchell, the process of kindergarten registration, how would you say that went this year? Did we experience any difficulties? Are there any things we're looking at to try and improve the process?
Well, if you had a chance to actually observe the process, I think they've done it so many times, I think they have a fine-tuned system that they use. But when having, almost, 50 more students to register as compared to last year, I mean, I think it's inevitable that, there may be some times where people, have to wait a few extra minutes to actually be processed. It's one of those things where all of the staff involved in the process, they're always like looking for ways to make it more efficient. So I think, I did hear that there were some folks that had to, wait a little more than they had hoped. And I think that, our responsibility is to always try and find ways to make the process a little more efficient so that we can reduce the amount of wait time.
Okay, if there's any ways that, that the committee can help with, if there's something on the technology side that can be done, or there's community outreach or anything like that, that we can help people so they're better prepared, or can do things ahead of time to reduce the amount of time that they have to wait, then that would be great. Just
Thank
let us
you.
know.
Thank you. Will do. It is, I can tell you that it is a busy place for 2 days. And it takes place right in this room.
Anything else? Nope, thank you. Next order of business is discussion and a vote to approve resolutions, SCR 2019-04, a contract extension with Alpha Best Education before and after school student programs. We're going to table this. I need a motion to table this for 2 weeks. It is our intention to exercise the school committee's right, if I should say that, to go out for another 2 years, but we're working on the contract language, so we'll bring that back in 2 weeks. I need a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table by Mr. Fiorello, seconded by Mrs. Bernardo at the end. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0, table to the next meeting. Next is SCR 2019-05, contract extension with Barton Gilman LLP for legal services. Again, we're going to table this for another, to our next meeting, where is our intention to have a contract extension with them. We just need to work out the details in the letters, letter of engagement for the school committee. So I need a motion to table.
Motion to table.
Motion to table by Mr. Fiorello, seconded by Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. Next is discussion and a vote to approve amended policies. I-15, curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials. Mr. Fiorello.
I-15, curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials, was put together by Mr. Damana and his group of educators. I don't know if there's anything Mr. Damana would want to add to this. This policy essentially is keeping current with what our current practices are, and I would make the motion to approve this revised policy.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve I-15, curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Waters. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it 6-0. That is adopted. Next is G19, report and child abuse and neglect, formerly policy number J13, child abuse and neglect prevention. Mr. Fiorello.
Yes, what started off as a renumbering, reclassification of this policy, because it's actually a policy that applies to personnel, so we moved it to the personnel area. But after Dr. Santa looked at it, she realized that it needed a pretty good overhaul. So I would ask Dr. Santa just to maybe come up and give like a 2-minute brief on the changes. It's also important to note that this policy applies to volunteers also, and when we do a revision to the volunteer policy, we will make mention of that fact right in that policy.
So the original policy was written in the late to middle 70s and then got revamped multiple times, so it became kind of like a Frankenstein policy. So I actually scrapped the whole thing. And what I put in place was, and it was also underneath, it was more of a protection of students, but there were things in there that we can't do, neither can DCYF. So a policy can't make us make DCYF do something. So some of the language was a little funny. So what I did is I took the guidance that we actually just got from the state last Monday, and I took the guidance from there as well as their protocol that we have to follow for not just reporting child abuse, but they specifically, if there's sexual accusation of sexual abuse between students or with an adult with a student, there's specific protocols we have to follow. I took the exact language, I didn't change a bit of it, and I put it right into that policy. And that's pretty much it. And then I placed it into personnel because it's about personnel reporting. And the importance of all the adults in the educational institution having to be able to report, and our obligation to report to the superintendent.
Mr. Mitchell, question in regards to this policy.
Sir.
How will we update the teachers and staff in regards to any changes? I know there are reporting, but will we get a sheet signed off by a teacher and or someone so that we know that they understood the policy?
Well, that's a great point. We have already discussed it with our district leadership team, and we have a process that we require all staff to follow every year, and it's a policy sign-off, and there are mandatory policies that must be read and signed off on by all school staff, both certified and non-certified. We have to make sure that everyone, including volunteers, are reviewing this policy and understand their duty to report. So, that's a great point. So I think now that the policy is approved, then we will make sure that we get it out to everyone.
Yeah.
Mike is really helpful with that. We'll get it out electronically and ask that everyone read it, and maybe we could do some a sign-off to ensure that everyone has reviewed it.
So when I talked through this policy with the lawyers, we at first said because it's a law, you don't really have to write a policy for a law. But the argument I was making is the reason why we want it to be a policy is because we send out this electronic list of all the policies people have to read and electronically sign, and this could be easily added to that list, and therefore we have that kind of protection. So that was one of the big reasons. That's before the state came out with guidance. So.
Anyone else?
I would just make a motion to approve.
Mr. Fiorello makes a motion to approve. Second by Mrs. Waters. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0, that policy is adopted. Next is number 3, I-7, school volunteers, which is tabled. So next on our agenda is personnel recommendations.
Good evening. I bring forth 2 retirements and 1 leave of absence request this evening. I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the retirements of Diane Nadeau, building secretary at Joseph McCourt Middle School, with an effective date of July 5th, 2019, after 31 years of service, and Dale Odell, physical education and health teacher at Cumberland High School, with an effective date of September 20th, 2019, also after 31 years of service.
So we have 2 retirements, 1 certified, 1 non-certified, and I need a motion. Motion to approve the retirements. Second by Mrs. Waters. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you for 31 years. I don't know how you replace either one of them, but I think the school secretaries are the backbone, right, of what happens in a school, and sometimes you think they're the principal in charge because they're the one calling the shots. So we'll certainly miss them. Thank you. Next.
I request the advice and consent of the school committee on the unpaid leave for Catherine Dobbin, kindergarten teacher at Community School, effective March 25th, 2019 through the remainder of the 2018-19 school year.
Need a motion on a leave of absence? Motion to approve. Motion approved by Mrs. Waters. Second by Mr. Hess. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is school committee comments, school liaison reports. Anyone? Hold on. Over here.
No, ladies first.
I just have one comment. This weekend I was Fortunate to be a guest judge at the Future Chef competition that Sodexo sponsored, and I was blown away. I really was. I really had zero expectations, but these kids came like ready to win, and they were just so enthusiastic and like such good chefs. Everything was so delicious. It was really hard to pick a winner. But it was amazing, and I just wanted to say congratulations to all the kids who participated. It was a tough competition, and they did a great job.
Yeah, it was. We did have the mayor there as well as a judge, and I don't think I ate enough Mexican food for a lifetime now. But we did get a winner, and I know Sodexo, the 3 top winners go into a book for the state, and the state winner goes to the nationals for a contest as well. So thank you to Sodexo for putting that on. It was, I'll skip the Mexican the next time, but thank you. All right, Mr. Fiorello.
I just wanted to mention that when Mrs. Friedman was giving her update on the grading policy, I failed to mention that the grading policy will actually result in a policy change, which will come up in the next probably month or two. Also, I wanted to just mention that the Cumberland Special Education Advisory Committee, which is the parent-led group, will be meeting on April 4th at 6 p.m. at Jay Gray's. Refreshments and appetizers will be provided. So I welcome all the parents to come out for that for special education.
I just wanted to make note, I thought it was great that the Valley Breeze did a story on the CHS band uniforms. I think Mr. Ferrocci has done an excellent job with that program. It's great now that the uniforms finally come close to matching the talent and brightness of the individuals in that program. So I'm glad we were able to make that happen this year, and I think they look great based on the pictures that I've seen. I'd also like to thank the mayor for coming out and explaining to the Fiscal Committee where things stand. Certainly, I think if there's ever been a reason to justify teaching arithmetic, it's last year's tax levy. And I don't envy the mayor or the town council, the work they have ahead of them to try and balance that budget and get all of that work done. Speaking of work and expanding on Mrs. Friedman's comments about the fact that what we see in the meetings and what we discuss about the administration doing is really just the tip of the iceberg as far as the work that gets done. I think it's also worth commenting that while the work that we do at these meetings in the committee is important, there's other work that gets done behind the scenes that people don't see. Questions that get asked, outreach that happens to the administration and other people, that it's not just the votes that get taken in the meetings that exemplify our work, but other things that happen behind the scenes, things that happen in subcommittee meetings, which unfortunately are not particularly well attended, which is unfortunate. But it's not just what you see up here. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens. And to Sahasra, I would like to say CONGRATULATIONS. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Superintendent, do we have executive session tonight?
No, we do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Fiorello?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded by Mrs. Bernardo. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you for coming.
Thank